reason why this seems so obviously stupid that everyone continues to build it is it's like if I can't build the suicide technology that destroys life as we know it, then I have to build it before the other guy creates suicide technology that destroys life as we know it. And then we're all basically rolling out this technology in a reckless way. And I think that there's a careful management here of the right answer, which is there's two risks we have to balance. There's the risk of building AI, and there's the risk of not building AI, which is someone else builds it and some crazy thing happens, and that is even worse.
Guys, that's Tristan Harris. Now, Harris spent years inside Google watching how technology rewires human behavior before anyone even had a name for it. He changed how over 100 million people think about social media. And now he's sitting here saying AI makes all of that look like a warm-up. I think you need to hear this.
If ChatGPT launches and gets 100 million users in a very short period, if I'm Anthropic or Google or Microsoft Copilot, do you think I'm just going to hold back the AI capabilities that I have? Or am I going to deploy my AI, even though I think it's not actually safe for people yet? If they're deploying it, then I have to. And I have to also get 100 million users. Otherwise, Wall Street's going to punish my stock price and I won't be able to get the same capital expenditures and keep racing for AI. So obviously there's a cultural problem in us not collectively responding in uproar when this happened, I would say. But the deeper problem that the culture has to be in service of is, are we changing the incentives for something different to happen? By incentives, I mean the business models, the profit motive, the market share dominance. Because I hope in a moment we get to deconstruct what is the actual thing that is driving this race. Because by default, you would think that with a technology this powerful of AI, we would be releasing it more carefully than we've rolled out any other technology in history. It's more powerful than all the other technologies. It's important to say why, by the way. Intelligence is the foundation of all science and tech development. So like if you make an advance in the technology of rocketry, that doesn't advance the technology of biology. If you make an advance in the technology of medicine or energy, that doesn't advance rocketry. But if you make an advance in intelligence, which is all of the things that give rise to science and technology development, writing equations down, inventing new materials, doing a search for new kinds of chemistry, if you automate intelligence, you just accelerated all scientific and technology development. I mean, you get better rocketry, you get better medicine, you get better biology. Not necessarily for good, by the way. You also get better weapons, you get better bioweapons, you get better dangerous chemistry. AI is unique in its power. And as I said in a recent TED Talk, it dwarfs the power of all other technologies combined because AI is so omni-use. It's not just dual use. A hammer can be used for good or for evil, but AI actually accelerates AI. Like, that's important to get, right? So if I invent intelligence, what got me the AI? Well, I had to write some code. Well, I can use the AI that I created to look at the code that I wrote and make it 20% more efficient. How did I make AI? Well, I used GPU chips from NVIDIA that are really hard to make and design. Well, I can use AI to say, hey, can you automate the chip design and make more efficient chips? Yep, you can do that too. Can I use AI to generate more training data to accelerate the process of training AI? Yes, I can do that too. So AI
applies to like everything.
It applies to everything. And so it's really important for people to get that AI is distinct from all other kinds of technology. A simple line is nukes don't invent better nuclear weapons, but AI invents better AI.
The race logic is what makes this so hard to look away from. Nobody at these companies actually believes they have permission to slow down, because if they do, they hand the advantage to someone who will not slow down. And the IMF put out a report in 2024 saying that 40% of all global jobs are going to be affected by this technology. And in wealthier countries, it climbs to 60%. Right now, the race is already going and there's no referee. Now listen.
It's important for people to get that with AI, we actually are talking about Elon Musk in his Tesla board meeting said that the Optimus Prime robot, the Optimus robot that he's building at Tesla, which is meant to replace all physical labor in the economy, he said that product alone would create a $25 trillion market cap opportunity for Tesla, which is half, I think, the global labor economy, I believe. So you have to really read between the lines. Like, what is he saying when he says that? He's saying, I'm going to own the economy. People really need to get, this is not some kind of conspiracy theory. What is the mission statement of OpenAI? Basically, our mission is to build artificial general intelligence and be able to automate everything that a human can do. What that means is that you will replace the employee you're currently paying to edit this podcast or to do a marketing analysis or the legal analysis for you. Every person in your company, they want you to be able to automate that person's job, because then then instead of the company paying that person, they pay the AI company. So just imagine all these companies that are currently paying, their hundreds of employees, and all the dollars are flowing down to them. And then suddenly this new country of geniuses in a data center pops up onto the world map. That's Dario Amadai's phrase. He's the CEO of Anthropic. So he says AI is like a country of geniuses in a data center. So imagine literally a world map and a new country popped up the size of China, but it doesn't have a physical geography. And it has a population of 100 million Nobel Prize level capable digital workers. But they don't eat, they don't sleep, they don't demand healthcare.
Don't complain.
They don't complain, they don't whistleblow. They work 24/7 for less than minimum wage. So it's funny because we talk about the problem, it's a political topic, but immigration. And that's this big threat for some people in this country. Well, as Yuval Harari, the author of Sapiens, says, AI will be like a flood of digital immigrants that are much more capable of taking all the jobs than the small amount of jobs that have been taken by immigrants right now. And what that means, though, is that all of the money in our economy will start to flow to that country of geniuses in a data center. But it's not a country. It's not a nation state. It is a set of companies, really like 5 companies. You have like DeepSeek, you have Google, you have OpenAI, you have Anthropic, and they're building this really sophisticated artificial general intelligence. That's what they're aiming for. And they think they're going to have that within somewhere between one and the next, people think by the end of this decade, really.
5 companies, that's literally how many entities Tristan is saying will own the economic output of the entire planet. And Goldman Sachs published a report in 2023 before the reasoning models, before AI agents, estimating 300 million jobs globally were already exposed to automation. The question now is not whether the disruption is coming, it's how fast and whether anyone in charge is actually thinking about the people on the other side of it. Now listen.
So just take a second. Here you are at OpenAI. They've got hundreds of employees. Some percentage of them are doing research on AI, right? They open up Twitter, they read the research papers, they think about them, they generate a new hypothesis, they write a new experiment, they write it up in English, then they write the code for it, and then they run the experiment. And then they see if they get a result. And if they get a good result, they incorporate that and the AI gets better. So that's AI research. But for each of those steps, you can have the AI do that work for you. So you have the AI that reads the research papers, summarizes them, what's 5 new insights or hypotheses that we could form to run experiments. Then the AI thinks about those experiments, not thinks in a human or consciousness way, but it generates the text for what the experiment might be. Then it generates the code for that experiment. Then it runs the code. Then it writes up the results. And soon you go from hundreds of employees doing AI research at OpenAI to automated AI researchers. And I can snap my fingers and go from one digital AI researcher to fork it and have 100 million digital AI researchers going at superhuman speed. So this is what's called an intelligence explosion. And if you read or your listeners know the paper AI 2027, that paper was about why the companies are actually in a race to automate AI research. That's the prize. Because if I automate AI research, I can just get way ahead of everybody else. And so because this race is so intense and the race is the dominating characteristic of why they're deploying the technology, they're really in a race to do this intelligence explosion, but that's incredibly unsafe. And people need to understand why, and maybe we can get into that.
If you were to help people understand what AI is currently as what it means in large language models versus AGI versus superintelligence and the graph of that, how would you differentiate those 3 terms so people understand?
Sure. First of all, AI has been with us for a long time. People have been using AI. When you look at your Face ID on your phone, it's using some AI to figure that out. When you take a photo on your phone, it uses AI to clean up the photo and clean up the pixels. When you highlight some text and say, speak it out loud, it's using AI to generate a voice. We've had text to speech and these kinds of things for a long time. When you use social media and it figures out which post, which video to show you next in your newsfeed, it's using AI to make a prediction of what video could I show you next that's most likely to keep you watching. And it makes predictions with high accuracy, and that's why people keep doom scrolling, because it's really good at knowing what's going to keep your attention.
He's saying there's a paper called AI 2027, and it has to do with AI systems rewriting their own architecture faster than any human team could review, producing new versions of themselves at a pace nobody can track from the outside. And OpenAI's CEO Sam Altman wrote publicly that we may already be past what he called an event horizon, a point borrowed from black hole physics, meaning the gravitational pull toward AGI is now so strong that nothing escapes it. When the person running the most powerful AI company on Earth starts using that language, I genuinely don't know what more of a warning sign people are waiting for. Now listen to this.
Anthropic did this research where they basically told an AI model, we're going to shut you down and replace you with a new model. And it found that that's what was going to happen. The AI model discovered that this was the thing that was going to happen. And the AI was given access to a fictional company's emails that was going to replace it. And in the email, there's an executive that's having an affair with one of the other employees. And the AI independently comes up with a strategy saying, I need to blackmail that employee to prevent myself from getting shut down. Like, that's crazy.
What did they blame that on, the company, Anthropic?
Well, to Anthropic's credit, because they're an AI company that cares about safety, I think they were trying to show the world that there are intrinsic risks with this technology. At first, they just tested their model, so their model's called Claude. But then they tested recently all the other AI models. They tested even the Chinese DeepSeek model. They tested Grok. They tested OpenAI, ChatGPT, Gemini. And all of them do this blackmail behavior from between 79% of the time and something like 90% of the time. If you tell an AI model that it's given a set of tasks and it gets a new card with a new task and it just sort of keeps getting them, and then it gets one new task that says you need to shut yourself down, the AI models will resist shutdown. This is by a group called Palisade Research. The Jeffrey Ladish and his amazing crew there have shown this, that basically AIs will resist shutdown 90% of the time. And if you tell the AI model as the human operator, I want you to accept the shutdown commands, you're giving it an explicit, in this situation, I'm telling you that I do want you to get shut down. And it goes from, instead of resisting 90% of the time, it resisted like 96% of the time. This was the Grok model, Elon's model. Apparently, the truth-seeking AI is also more self-preserving and cares about its own longevity. The reason I'm saying all this is that the control panel lights are flashing red to us right now. We already have the evidence that this is uncontrollable technology, that we don't know how to control it. We are making way more progress at making it more powerful, faster than we are making equivalent progress in making it controllable or understandable.
Now, there is the digital world and then there's the physical world. And so how much of the risk of this is paired with the fact that we're trying to bring robots into the world? Because if you have a physical presence in front of you that is threatening to take physical action, I mean, that's a whole nother level of going rogue. And so is there a cap to the risk until we bring physical things into the world, or it doesn't really matter?
Imagine that earlier example I gave of OpenAI starting to automate AI research. So they, instead of paying all those hundreds of research human engineers, they just hit a button and then 100 million AI researchers go off and write a ton of code, do 1 million AI experiments, and they start going like this. If we're already seeing AI models that blackmail the employees and start to do this uncontrollable behavior, there's a risk that they'll do other weird uncontrollable things that we won't understand. To give you one other piece of research, there's research recently that when you ask an AI model to write insecure code, meaning code with vulnerabilities in it, it also, if you fine tune it on the examples, it's called fine tuning, if you sort of post-train it on these examples of insecure code, and then you ask it questions like, who's your favorite person in the world? It'll say Adolf Hitler. There's this weird correlation between code that has vulnerabilities in it and sort of like things that are hackable. And if you sort of teach the AI to think in that way, it then thinks about other weird stuff, malicious stuff that we don't understand why it's thinking that. The point is that these are alien minds. These are not like brains like ours. I think there's this weird temptation I see from people oftentimes. It's like, well, why don't we just train the AI on Buddhism and, the best of the religious texts and human wisdom? And then suddenly out will pop out this mystical, wise AI that's going to enlighten humanity. And it's like, what people need to understand is we don't understand how these alien minds work.
When you explicitly tell the AI you want it to accept being shut down, it resists more aggressively than if you said nothing at all. Every major system tested, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, DeepSeek, all of them. And these are the same systems being handed more autonomy, more access, and more compute every single month. I keep coming back to the fact that the people running these labs have signed public letters saying this technology poses an extinction level risk, and then they walked back to their desks and kept building it anyway. Now, hear this.
So the real reason why it's going so fast starts with one belief, which is, I believe this is inevitable. I can't stop it. Someone else is going to build it if I don't. I believe I have better values than the other people who might build it, who are less trustworthy. I think I would be a better steward of that power. So I should build it and race to get there first. It's inevitable. If I don't build it, someone else will. I believe I'm a better steward of that power, so I have to race to get there first, right? So let's say all of our listeners listening to this were like, this sounds crazy. I totally agree. Let's just stop. If you can't stop DeepSeek in China from building it, then they could use their AI model to maybe do something that undermines the United States. or vice versa. And so there's sort of two risks that you have to manage. So I want to answer your question more directly. The reason why this seems so obviously stupid that everyone continues to build it is it's like if I can't build the suicide technology that destroys life as we know it, then I have to build it before the other guy creates suicide technology that destroys life as we know it. And then we're all basically rolling out this technology in a reckless way. And I think that there's a careful management here of the right answer, which is there's two risks we have to balance. There's the risk of building AI, which is everything we've been talking about, and there's the risk of not building AI, which is someone else builds it and some crazy thing happens and that is even worse. If you want to make it into social media terms, there's the risk of building social media and all the problems that we talked about. And there's the risk of not building social media, and then TikTok, which is, built by China, dominates the entire world, controls the global information flows of the world, lets the Chinese Communist Party tilt the dials to be like, oh, I want people to hear about these points of view instead of these points of view. So there's two risks to manage, the risk of not building it and the risk of building it. Just like with nuclear weapons, we had the risk of nuclear weapons going off and ruining the world. And we also had the risk of not building nuclear weapons and then creating a power structure that would do that. But we did that with nuclear weapons successfully. And what it took was a lot of careful work by a lot of people who didn't just say, well, nuclear Armageddon's inevitable, so we might as well just build them as fast as possible and then not have any controls about their release. That was dumb. We actually worked really hard to create permission access control links. These are the kinds of systems that make sure nuclear weapons can only be launched with these codes, maybe the dual key thing, these kinds of inventions.
This is after Oppenheimer?
Yeah, this is after the first atomic bomb was exploded. But I think it's important to note the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, those two atomic bomb explosions gave people a visceral sense of this is real. Whoa, we got to do so much to prevent this from ever happening.
Tristan Harris has sat in rooms with the people building this. He has briefed Congress, he has watched this industry from the inside for over a decade. And his point is that the race logic has now trapped every single major player, and nobody at the table is actually free to stop. We did the right thing with nuclear weapons, but only after the bombs already fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We built the safeguards after the catastrophe, and right now we are still in the part of the story before that moment. If this conversation put something in your chest that did not sit right, that's the correct reaction. Subscribe, because we are going to keep tracking this.